Coccidioidomycosis, commonly known as San Joaquin Valley fever, is an ancient disease. It was not until the early part of the 20th century when a pathologist at Stanford, Dr. William Opholz, reported it as a fungus, gave it its name, and gave the disease its name.
Yeah, I had some flu-like symptoms for a while. I think I missed there was a period of time, about a week, where I missed work when I was not necessarily with the cough, but the flu-like symptoms, fever, sweats, and just being kind of tired, felt like the flu.
In June of 2001, I was diagnosed with pneumonia, or what they thought might have been valley fever. I was in the hospital 10 days, and my cocci test came back negative. About 2 months after that, began to feel bad again, and they redid the cocci, and then it was 1 to 8, and that's the first time they found out that I had valley fever.
I was fatigued, fever, loss of appetite, coughing, my back, my chest were hurting all the time, always wanting to sleep, never wanting to do anything, no energy.
I came down with it about 5-6 years ago. It started off with flu-like symptoms, just very fatigue and things like that. And being a type A personality who's always on the go, it was really difficult for me to just slow down. So of course, after that, I went to the doctor, checked up, and he diagnosed me with valley fever.
We have the dubious distinction of having more of it in Kern County than any other place in the world. One reason, obviously, is that we have more people living here, and you don't diagnose valley fever until people get sick with it, and even then frequently you don't diagnose. Like, for instance, recently they found valley fever in a rather barren area of northeastern Brazil. Well, it's probably been there forever, maybe even more prevalent there than here in Bakersfield. But there are very few people living in northeastern Brazil. And so this is a new discovery, probably a new discovery of a very ancient existence. But most of it in the northern hemisphere is seen in Southern California, particularly Kern County, somewhat less in Kings and Tulare County, less still in Fresno County, and really none ordinarily found north of Modesto. There's always been a fair amount of valley fever around Tracy. And the west side of the valley, right along from Coalinga, Avenal, Wasco, has always been a heavy incidence area. There's a moderate amount on the eastern Kern County deserts. And then as you get into southern Nevada, there's a little around Las Vegas, which the Chamber of Commerce does not publicize. Then further east, there's a lot in southern Arizona, from Phoenix, and then particularly in the area around Tucson, and many, many cases there. Some in southern New Mexico, and a fair amount in southwest Texas, particularly in the area around El Paso, Del Rio, in Texas.
Before I moved down here, I had requested a transfer. Target had opened a new building down here. And I remember my mother saying, don't go down there, there's valley fever down there, you're going to get it. And your relatives, your grandparents got it and contracted it. I had no idea what it was, and you kind of, at the time, dismissed it, I guess. At least I did. I'm sure, Mom, you're crazy. I'm not going to get anything, don't worry about it.
Yeah, it was a complete surprise, because after I lived here for over 10 years or so, I didn't think I was going to get it. But that just tells me that no one's immune to valley fever when you live here in the valley.
It has long been known that certain genetic groups have a harder time handling this disease than others. Throughout the 30s, 40s, and 50s, it was Filipinos, Native Americans, and Hispanic Americans of native extraction. In recent years, the most severe cases have been in young Afro-American males. So there's been a shift there too. But that's a genetic factor. Then there are other coexisting illnesses. The immune system that protects us from getting too severe with this disease is not very effective until age 2 and becomes less effective after age 60. So we see more severe cases at the two extremes of life. Also, there are coexisting illnesses, common coexisting illnesses like diabetes that make it worse, like people with chronic lung disease, emphysema. When they get valley fever, it tends to be worse. Also, people on certain medications that depress the immune system, cancer-causing drugs, cancer-treating drugs, chemotherapy, in other words. Also, cortisone drugs, which lots of people take for lots of reasons, depress the immune system and will tend to make it worse. Also, we see it after certain debilitating illnesses. In other words, somebody recovering from a serious heart attack or a stroke has a poorly functioning immune system for a while. People with cancer, any kind of cancer, anywhere in the body, are severely depressed immunologically and are therefore more susceptible also.
I'm a diabetic also, so Dr. Einstein told me that valley fever loves diabetics. I took diflucan for a year and went off of it. About a year and a half, my symptoms felt like they were coming back. My Coxie test is up again. It's 1 to 4, and the last one we did just this last week is 1 to 8. But being a diabetic, they don't like you to take the medication for long periods of time. You know, I feel tired, but never one, you know, some people have to go to bed for 3 months or whatever. Mine has never been that sort where I saw a man come into the office where his number was 1 to 4 and could barely walk. But even mine at 1 to 8, I can still function. So you can still be functioning and think everything's okay, but just feeling tired and not quite yourself and be having it.
Treatment, the first medication was used by me against valley fever in 1954, called amphotericin. And it was the only drug for many, many years. And it's a tough drug, fairly toxic, hard to take, and moderately effective. It's still probably the best drug we have. In the sick patients, we still resort to it. And then another group of drugs that can be taken orally. Amphotericin can only be given by vein. Group of oral drugs have come along since that time, which are probably not quite as effective, but much less toxic and much easier to take. And there are 2 of those we use regularly, and 2 more that we're using experimentally. They all belong to the same family. They're called azoles. None of them, unfortunately, are curative. What they do is they are what we call fungostatic. They keep the fungus from multiplying, but they do not kill it. So there are relapses because some of the fungi do survive. And what we are looking for, which we do not yet have, is a killer drug, what we call a fungicidal drug. And there is research going on in that area because fungus diseases, not just valley fever, but related fungus diseases, are a major health problem now, particularly in people with cancer, with other chronic illnesses. And the other big push has been in vaccines. Vaccines to immunize people so they won't get the disease in the first place. Like we immunize against measles and whooping cough and smallpox and pneumonia and other things, where we give a small amount of the material in whatever form to cause a very mild illness that wakes up the immune system and puts out the appropriate antibodies like it would as if the person had the disease. This is really a community effort. This is the first community effort at vaccine development since the Salk vaccine for polio. It was the first one. And of course it got a big boost from President Roosevelt having had polio. I'm sure if FDR had not had polio, we would today maybe not have the Salk vaccine. As it is, that did not happen. And the community efforts to raise funds for this research came to a culmination in the about 2 years after the dust storm in 78, 79, 80, when a vaccine that had been worked out at the University of California at Berkeley and at Davis, made from the whole the whole mushroom bag, so to speak, was developed, was tested here in Bakersfield with all volunteer organizations, donated funds. Dr. Royce Johnson was in charge of that program. And it turned out to be an effective vaccine. However, being made from the natural substance, it turned out to be much too irritating. People could not tolerate it, so we had to drop and drop and drop the dose we gave them till we reached the level where it was no longer effective. So then nothing much happened until the early 90s, when a group of doctors and citizens here got together and said, we really have to do something about this. And Dr. Johnson was involved in this, I was, Dr. Royce Johnson, Dr. Gennaro, the health officer, and a foundation was formed to raise funds and organize scientists to do this using the newer techniques, the nuclear techniques that no longer required using the harmful substance that we had used before. And that took place, and that has been quite successful. We are now about 5 years into this project. 5 different laboratories in California, Arizona, and Ohio are doing the work. Cal State Bakersfield is doing the administration of the funds. And fundraising has been successful from many sources. The state, the county, the federal government through some of Representative Bill Thomas's efforts, private initiative through fundraisers of various types. Rotary International has been very active and very helpful. We are pretty much at the end of the funding cycle now, and oh yes, I left out the California Healthcare Foundation was a major contributor. They are the when Blue Cross of California went for profit, they had to set up a public benefit corporation and called WellPoint, and that's where this money comes from. But all of those cycles have now pretty much expired, and we will need at least 2 more years before we can even go to field trial. We have finished the mouse trials, and we can protect mice completely. We have done some monkey trials, and they have been successful also. So to complete the work, we have to do a human safety trial and then a human efficacy trial. Both of those have to be approved by the FDA, of course. And the FDA is still wanting more material, particularly safety issues and also efficacy issues from animals. We have recently had to start a new project in that along those lines. So we are probably at least 2 years away from a efficacy trial, a human efficacy trial. Then, of course, we have to wait a long time to see if it really was effective. We have to see a decrease in new cases. So we're still on a long road to what will hopefully be a successful effort. Then comes another major hurdle. Somebody has to make the stuff. We have done and are doing the research, but in order to be a commercially viable vaccine, industry has to become interested in it. Industry has not been interested so far, for good reasons. There's not much money in vaccines. Drug companies make much more money with tranquilizers, birth control pills, erectile deficiency medications than they would with a vaccine for what is basically an orphan disease in a little cow county in Southern California. I mean, there's not that much enthusiasm back in Indianapolis and Rahway, New Jersey, with the big drug companies. So we have had to work on that problem with less than spectacular success so far. And that's going to be a major problem. And then, of course, a decision has to be made by epidemiologists who is going to get vaccinated. We're not obviously going to vaccinate the whole country. We don't, that's not necessary or feasible. Do we vaccinate people when they come into California? Do we set up a station at the border on I-10 and I-40 like the fruit inspection stations? Or do we leave it up to people, educate them, or do we try to organize a major public effort like polio has to do from time to time, and like right now they're doing with flu vaccine? I mean, there's still lots of bridges to be crossed.
I feel good now, trying to go out there and promote, raising funds for Valley Fever, trying to get this through. I have a younger brother who was diagnosed with it a few months ago, a mother who was just diagnosed with it as well. They're doing fine. My younger brother is the one that had it the worst, though. Luckily they caught mine just in time.
I consider myself to be lucky. It sounds kind of funny saying I'm lucky that I have Valley Fever, but you hear some of those stories, and my case was very mild, very mild. So I don't share with a lot of people that I have it. I don't complain about it or anything because I'm very lucky.
In this valley, there's lots and lots of cases of valley fever, and just be aware that if you do come up with flu-like symptoms, check up with your physician. Do not take it for granted. There are mild cases as well as casual cases, so I mean devastating cases, so you really have to check up with your physician and get treated for it.